Welcome everyone to our latest virtual roundtable. This time we are going to be covering our talent report that we just released on Wednesday last week. A lot to cover, a lot of really interesting data that we have pulled together for this report. And as ever, this is a roundtable where it's partly briefing to go over some of the latest data and partly also discussion. So please do weigh into the conversation by putting your questions into the chat if you have a question, and we'll get to them throughout the hour. Just to say that again, this is the latest report from our side, published on Wednesday. It is our talent report. We have, we look at, of course, all of the latest data, but also look at it in the context of the use cases, the most recent use cases that the banks are putting out, but also looking at the talent as an enabler to getting these use cases into production. And we're going to get into the details of all of this throughout the course of the hour. But before we dive into the details, I am so pleased to be joined by, well, of course, my wonderful colleague Colin, who runs our intelligence team, who'll be moderating the session today. But our esteemed speakers, Ricardo from BBVA and Sumee from TD Bank, joining us today for this virtual roundtable. And I will hand over now, just before we get into the details, just Ricardo and Sumee, if you could introduce yourselves a little bit on your background and what you're doing at the bank. And Ricardo, I'll start with you.
Hi, hello, and it's a pleasure for me to be here today with you guys. So as you briefly introduced, I'm Ricardo García. I'm the global head of GRM data and analytics, and I'm also leading the analytics transformation function within BBVA globally. And amongst other responsibilities, I'm in charge of the entire community of data scientists and data specialists in the organization. So for me, it's quite relevant to be here in this roundtable today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ricardo. Thank you so much for joining us from Madrid. And over to you, Sumee.
Thanks, Alexandra. And echoing Ricardo, thank you for the invitation to be on this roundtable. I head the TD's AI practice and Center of Excellence. I've been with the bank, I want to say 11 years, and largely a digital product leadership journey, standing up teams working on identity, open banking, and marketplaces. So looking forward to the conversation today.
It's so great to have you with us, Sumee, both of you, and so much to discuss. But I just wanted to quickly, for those on the call that maybe don't know the index as well as others, I just wanted to say that and remind that the Evident AI Index covers the 50 largest banks in North America and in Europe, and we measure AI capabilities and AI adoption in the index. And we are at a really interesting point because we're halfway between the index update in October, right, and the annual index update of 2025, which is going to be in October. So we're at this great midway point, and the talent report is in a way sort of a snapshot of what's going on in the sector. I also wanted to maybe just remind that the talent pillar is the pillar that weighs the most in the index at 45%. Of the total weight. It matters a lot what kind of talent the bank has, the talent composition, but we also look at what the banks are hiring for, what the leading banks are hiring for, especially as things are moving so quickly in the AI space and the AI adoption journey of the banks. Keeping an eye on what's going on in the talent space is incredibly important. But just to say, this is this midway point between the index updates. What we'll cover today is a snapshot of the sector, the emerging trends, and identify the outliers and sort of the leading banks and what they're doing. And so also just maybe to cast a little light on the talent pillar itself. And as a reminder, this is from the index that we released, the latest index in October. These are the top 10 on the talent pillar itself, not overall, but on the talent pillar. And interesting to see that across these top 10 banks, the ones that stayed steady and scored at the top for both talent capability and talent development were Capital One, JP Morgan, and BBVA, and only 3 banks in the top 10 list changed between 2023 to 2024, which was Combank, BBVA, and TD Bank. So we're delighted to have BBVA and TD represented on the call. And now I'm going to hand over to my colleague Colin, who's going to take us through some of the key findings of the latest cut of the talent data, and then we're going to get into a discussion with Ricardo and Sumee. And just to remind, just put any questions that you might have in the chat, and we'll get to them throughout the hour. Over to you, Colin.
Thanks, Alexandra. We want to get into the discussion with our panelists as quickly as possible. But before, I just want to do some of the briefest of stage setting to get everybody on the same page. Before we talk about the talent numbers, we obviously need to talk about evidence definition of talent. And I believe that we could argue about this slide and this slide alone for the rest of the hour. But I'm only going to use it to basically contextualize 2 of the key findings. And there's a whole methodology section in the report that you can download and read about. But basically, at Evident, we define AI talent in terms of 5 distinct capability areas. And starting from the bottom of the stacked column with the largest groups and then moving to the top, these are defined as data engineers. Those are the folks that are building and maintaining the data infrastructure and the data architecture to fulfill a bank's AI ambitions. We have next the AI development teams, the all-important data scientists and the quants that are designing and creating the AI models and algorithms behind the AI transformation efforts. Next, we have the AI software implementation talent, which are the people involved in planning, configuring, migrating, testing, and training to basically unleash the AI systems and make sure they're compatible with existing workflows. And last but not least, we have AI model risk and AI product management. The first group basically ensuring or mitigating the risks for potential adverse consequences from the misuse or incorrect use of AI models and systems. And lastly, the AI product managers that are really involved with product definition and scaling this across multiple lines of business and unlocking those individual value chains. The reason that we go into the depth on these definitions is to ensure what we are talking about and what we're not talking about. So when we add up all of these capability areas across the 50 banks that are represented in the Evident AIQ Index, we get to almost 80,000 individuals, which seems like a lot as a number on its own, but it's actually only 2% of all of the employees that are represented across each of those 50 banks. The most impressive part about this cohort is how fast the group is growing. It's grown 12.6% in the course of the last 6 months alone in an environment that is really defined by cost consciousness and in some cases, fairly limited increases in overall headcount amidst industry consolidation. So when we expand on Alexandra's intro about the talent capability section of the index and looking at who are the top 10 banks by AI talent volume, these are the current top 10 banks updated as of March 2025. And the orange segment is basically what they're adding on to their pre-existing talent stack between October and March. And we have 3 kind of important observations about this group. One is it's very consistent with what we saw in October. Actually, the 10 banks are basically the same in terms of AI talent volume. What you are seeing is a small shuffling of the deck represented by those +1 or -1 rank positions on the left-hand axis. It's consistent because, as you can see by the growth rates at the end of each of the bars, this group is not taking their foot off the gas. Most of these banks are still growing at double digits. And as a group, they're actually growing at 12.1%, so actually on par with the index. Consequently, as a result of this, AI talent across the index is not uniformly distributed. These 10 banks represent nearly half, 48%, of all of those 80,000 AI workers, and they constitute 46% of the growth. So they are keeping pace ahead of or on par with the rest of the index as we keep updating these numbers in an ecosystem that's changing really, really rapidly. And then last but not least, outside of this list, we see 4 additional banks that have achieved what we'll call scale in terms of their AI talent volume and are growing even faster at a rate of nearly twice what we see across like the top 10. These include Combank, BNY, TD Bank, and Lloyd's Banking Group. And each of these banks is characterized by one, if not 2, common factors. One is standing up new AI tech hubs globally, like Combank is doing with their new Seattle tech hub, and TD Bank is doing with their expansion of Layer 6 to the new New York office that was announced a couple weeks ago. And additionally, they're also expanding in terms of their global capabilities, their client portfolio, and their business beyond kind of their home regions and home markets as they're traditionally defined. So with that, we wanted to get into the weeds with our panelists on the first of 3 themes, which is this idea of capability areas. And the first question I have is really about how we see kind of the talent stack changing and what are the real hiring priorities in the last 6 or 12 months. And with this question, I wanted to go to Ricardo first because BBVA has made a lot of news recently about its talent stack. But if you go into your press archives, this is a journey that started back in 2021, 2022, when you made a concerted effort or put a stake in the ground to say, we are in the business of hiring tech talent, whether that's defined as engineers or mathematicians or cybersecurity or AI engineers. Ricardo, can you walk us through what you're seeing on the front lines?
Yes. So at BBVA, we have historically focused on more traditional AI capabilities, essentially traditional AI data scientists. As of now, we have a community of more than 1,000 data scientists operating across our footprint. However, in the recent months, 6 to 12 months, our priorities have shifted across 3 key roles. Firstly, is Gen AI data scientists for obvious reasons. We are focused on building and integrating Gen AI capabilities across the organization, and hence we are attracting talent on that front. Then another important area, engineering capabilities, and here we are talking about ML engineering, prompt engineering, AI engineering more broadly, to strengthen our technical foundation. It's always critical to have present that we can invest a lot in the data scientist space, but this needs to come together with investing in the engineering capabilities as well, because otherwise models and AI system will not be effectively put in production. And last but not least, data specialists. This group includes people and teams who do business analytics and are essential to our daily operations. We have now a community of more than 2,500 data specialists, and we really believe that this is critical for our business. They are not engineering, they are not data scientists, but they are working on a daily basis with data, and they bring a lot of value to the business. Hence, we are investing a lot in this group and in this specific team.
Sumee, anything to add to that? Are you seeing a shift towards new roles and areas of specialization, or is it the same stuff and the same kind of strategic plan that goes back several years with regards to TD?
A bit of both, Colin. So I'll say, compared to 18 months ago, we were heavily sort of research focused 18 months ago, attracted strong researchers, scientists, and now we're seeing a shift towards more application focused roles, so applied researchers, engineers, and so on. So well along on our commercialization journey, and therefore the composition has changed a little bit, pivoting away from just pure research to more application commercialization. The second space where I see change, and I think it's a good change, is growth in our AI product management team as we start to scale out these capabilities across lines of businesses. We're also seeing growth in sort of these bridge connectors roles, with folks who wear multiple hats, whether it's having both business banking domain fluency and also being well-versed on AI, or folks having good technology stack fluency within the bank, also having strong AI expertise. They serve as really good bridge connectors and accelerate adoption scale across the organization.
And Sumee, a follow-up. Sorry, yes. Go ahead, Alexandra.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt,
no,
but I have that habit, Colin, as you know. There is a question in the chat, and I think maybe for Ricardo, it's Claudine who's asking, does the data specialist, does that include privacy specialists? on data privacy? No.
Data specialists from any domain. So
Right.
even from privacy specialists, as long as they are working together with the data, they are identified in this group, in these teams.
Okay, super. Thanks for clarifying. Back to you, Colin. Sorry.
No worries. I wanted to move actually onto Alexandra's favorite topic and what we base kind of the introduction of the report around, which was the ultimate question we're trying to answer is, how do you build talent not to have more talent, but how do you build talent capability designed to accelerate use case production and ultimately secure the outcomes that the bank is trying to secure? And so I'll do a follow-up with Sumee is the categories that you just identified, those bridge connectors and those product managers. Given are those people really, is it the same answer? Those the essential missing link, especially when you look back on something like back in May, TD Bank started announcing a new suite of Gen AI pilots, including kind of a contact center agent, GitHub Copilot. So these use cases are becoming more prominent and more public kind of in the ecosystem. So what is the type of talent stack that is leading to that acceleration? Is it one thing, or is it keeping all of these talent capability areas we just talked about in some kind of delicate balance with one another?
Yeah, it's a great question. So building off of your comments, Colin, we did launch our first knowledge management solution within the call center last year. And we're seeing with that model stack, very broad applicability across lines of businesses. So part of what's driving the growth in the business functions and the product management functions is how do we really rinse and repeat and accelerate the adoption of these capabilities across businesses. The second point I'll make is I love the talent stack view. I think my opinion is to a large extent, the stack, the composition is informed by your AI strategy. And this is where banks fall within the spectrum of, we want to do all of our AI build in-house versus we don't want to build a specialized team in-house, and we want to really predominantly buy AI solutions capabilities. And so depending on where you fall in that spectrum, your talent stack changes. So if I think about TD, I think we build and we buy. Because of our acquisition of Layer 6 back in 2018, we have a strong R&D talent base in-house that powers all of our in-house build capabilities. But we also are pragmatic about buying where it makes sense to buy with our large strategic partners. And so very critical to embed AI talent across many different teams within the bank. Ricardo spoke very well about the team you need to build model capabilities, but we also think about it from a second line partner standpoint. What talent do we need within model risk and compliance and fluency we need within legal? What kind of talent we need within the businesses to drive the appropriate change management rigor to drive adoption of these use cases, et cetera.
And back to Ricardo for a follow-up question, especially since one of your many titles includes head of the analytics transformation unit, is in addition to what type of talent you're building, how do you organize for the business case that you're trying to bring into fruition? How do you what are some of the organizational constructs you've introduced recently that assure that all of those disparate groups globally are kind of working or singing from the same hymn sheet?
So our structure, or our data scientists, are organized in more than 60 decentralized center of expertise across our geographies and business unit, and they operate through a flexible project pool operating model. In addition to that, we also have 3 artificial intelligence factories, which are located in Spain, Mexico, and Turkey, and they are more devoted to cutting-edge projects. So this mixed setup of center of expertise, where we have data scientists for model development, for model risk as well, and then the AI factories more devoted to cutting-edge technologies and projects, enables agile delivery and very focused on data products and accelerating the industrialization of our AI use cases.
And then, given a question for both of you, given how quickly this space is changing and how many people are being added or repurposed within the organization, how do you design training programs that keep pace with the current state of AI versus the state of AI in 2022? And one of the things we're getting anecdotally through a lot of the banks that we talk to is that obviously training is starting to evolve from basic AI literacy to very practical hands-on training for how to use the tools that are obviously entering the ecosystem and scaling across the organization. And Ricardo, I know that BBVA has a longstanding data university and several partnerships involved in kind of their training ecosystem, and you've put up like impressive numbers. I think 50,000 people trained, over 1,000 data scientists with advanced certifications. My question is like, how do you keep that as evolving along pace with what the institution is trying to accomplish versus getting stuck in time or stuck in a rut?
This is a challenge. This is a challenge. So here, as you were explaining very well, so I would like to distinguish two groups. No? Firstly, the effort that we make in training our data scientists for new technologies. So now we are focused on training our stack of data scientists, more, let's say, experts on traditional AI in Gen AI technologies, so that they are able to build or to adapt LLMs for specific use cases. We all know, especially technical people, that traditional AI and Gen AI have some things in common, but the Gen AI is specific, has its own specificities, which can be a challenge if people do not have the right trainings and the right training and the right skill set. And then we also have another group of people, which is the wider community, who are using Gen AI capabilities. Let's think about ChatGPT or other kind of Gen AI tools. For those, we are focusing in training two specific aspects. Firstly, ethical and safe use of AI. That's quite important. So we all know that Gen AI is quite useful. It helps a lot in terms of personal efficiency, but at the same time, we need training in how to use it in a safe manner for data privacy reasons and other stuff. And secondly, prompting, how to make the most of these technologies. So for data scientists, these things can be more obvious, but for people in a branch, for instance, that could be quite challenging, and they are not that used to exploit these technologies. So we are given a lot of training to make the most of ChatGPT, Gemini, and other kind of tools that help a lot in terms of personal productivity.
Mm-hmm. And Sumee, back to you. My understanding is that you are involved a lot in setting some of the training curriculum and actually teaching some of that training curriculum. But what are you focused on, and at what level of the organization in terms of from the top down versus the bottom up?
Yeah, so I want to say very similar to Ricardo, almost 4 tiers of training, what we're rolling out. One is an executive education program in partnership with our academic partner, Columbia University. So as the Center of Excellence, we partner very closely with Columbia in sort of dictating the curriculum, what aspects we want them to cover with each line of business or each function. And Max, who's our chief research scientist, and I, we actually deliver segments of this training to our senior leaders to contextualize what's happening in the market and tie it to what we're doing at the bank. So that's a whole executive education program, which we have rolled out to a couple of businesses now. And we're seeing great results in terms of engagement, the aha moments where the business leaders start to see the opportunity and start to think of use cases actively. The second big category is just self-serve training we make available broadly to every employee within the bank. The third category Ricardo touched on, the prompt, every user of Gen AI applications has to be really good at prompting now. So more application-specific training we deliver when we roll out these use cases. And last but not the least, how do we grow AI domain expertise within the bank? We have a Center of Excellence which serves as the hub, but we also have AI practice teams that are embedded within the lines of businesses. So while the center stands tall on breaking new ground, translating R&D to commercialization to actual applications, we also do sort of very organically train our AI practice teams to be able to take those capabilities and then scale them within the lines of businesses. So really 4 tiers of training, the way we think about it.
Fantastic. So at this juncture, yes.
Were you going to move on, or can we jump to there's some great questions in the chat, if I may raise some of those.
Absolutely. Let's see what they're talking about.
there's a great one from Ola that my co-founder Annabelle has also answered in the chat, but I thought it'd be great to get Ricardo and Sumee to weigh in on this, and that is to this point around the talent acquisition challenges, right? And we always know, you know, there's a race or a war on AI talent. Everyone's fighting for the best, right, to move use cases swiftly through to production. And I think, Sumee, you mentioned, you know, AI product management and model risk management is sort of some of the focus areas we hear when we talk to the banks, that is quite a critical, but also slightly a very difficult, you know, it's difficult to get talent in those areas because everyone's looking for exactly the same talent. I don't know if maybe you go first and then over to Ricardo. What are you you know, how are you tackling those challenges? Are those the challenges that you're facing, or is it elsewhere?
And just to, sorry to interject, maybe we can divide up the question in terms of how you hire AI researchers versus some of the data scientists and the data specialists that Ricardo is talking about. And just to contextualize it for the audience, we just talked about how the top 10 banks control about 48% of the talent stack. When we're talking about AI researchers, the universe gets even smaller. And so the top 5 banks with AI research teams have about 55% of that small talent pool within AI dev. And TD Bank and Royal Bank of Canada really punch above their weight class here because of the legacy of having Layer 6 and Borealis respectively as that like institution. So actually that was the audience question and our question are exactly the same, Sumee, is like, how do you, in this really scarce marketplace, how do you actually recruit for this really competitive role? And how do you establish the bank's brand with PhD students and people from other industries and people who might not have considered a career in banking before?
Yeah, great questions. Colin, you're bang on. The acquisition of Layer 6, an AI startup, you know, 8 years ago, really helped us accelerate our AI journey. And I think we've done a great job sort of integrating while maintaining that startup culture within Layer 6 and ethos, you know, within the bank ecosystem, which I think is a great draw for talent coming in fresh out of graduating fresh out of universities. The team operates out of the office in Toronto's Mars Innovation District. So folks are very close to other startups and big tech firms that have presence in that area, which is also exciting. I want to say, because of our strong R&D focus, we show up quite strongly in academic conferences, whether it's NeurIPS or ICLR. Our researchers are often co-chairing, peer reviewing papers. And so you know, a potential prospective talent gets to meet our staff, develop a better appreciation of what they can continue to do within TD, which I think helps us a lot. Pivoting maybe to your question, Alexandra, model risk in particular being a very hard function to hire for, we're increasingly starting to frame this as you know, delineating the distinction between model developers and model risk or validators. We're trying to see really, are there good rotational opportunities where we can see benefits of why a model validation person working in a model development function would benefit and vice versa. So we're exploring rotation programs. We're also increasingly doing joint hiring as we sort of leverage our academic partnerships, which has helped a lot.
Ricardo, do you want to jump in on that?
Yes, this is a very good point, and it is obvious that now there is a clear war in the market regarding talent. So for us, our main pillar is that we have a differential strategy defined with our colleagues from talent and culture with regards to data scientists and data specialists. And this is something that is differential with a specific career path, specific conditions. So, and that makes BBVA very attractive, very appealing for the talent in the different markets across our footprint. Also, we have reflected a lot internally about how to attract this talent, and we do believe that top AI talent are attracted by the opportunity to tackle complex and high impact challenges, and also from the shift from theoretical let's say problems in the university, PhD, etc., to applied research. So we know that many researchers are valuing this ability to apply their knowledge in real business context, while remaining also close to the university and also to the cutting edge of innovation. And we have a specific programs for that with our university partners, with different universities here in Spain and also in the different countries where we operate. We remain our data scientists very close to the research opportunities and to the innovation that is produced in the academia.
Thanks, Ricardo. Maybe just a quick follow-up, but there's so many great questions in the chat. It's hard to tear oneself away from it. But there is a question here from Ashley, and I maybe just a rapid fire, because I know Colin is looking ahead. We've got a lot to get through.
We got time.
He's like probably saying, Alexandra, please be quiet now. But Ashley has this question in the chat saying, are your banks using AI agents? I mean, obviously the big question on everyone's mind and in the conversations we have with the banks is about agentic AI. And I know we weren't really going to touch on this, Colin, today, because there's so many other things to talk about. But I just thought maybe we could just touch on this quickly on this, the agentic AI question, insofar as it relates to the changing composition of talent. And we have pulled some data on looking at the banks that are hiring for specific agentic AI related roles. I don't think we've got slides on it today, but maybe if you both would comment on, does this change your outlook on what kind of talent is needed in the future if you're testing and putting agentic AI use cases in production? And maybe, Sumee, we can start with you and then we go to Ricardo.
Yeah, I want to say we're actively working on agentic AI use cases. We're not live with any yet. In terms of composition, this is at least the way we see it, and this may evolve. We see it as an evolution of the automation work that's been in progress within the bank for many, many years. So robotic process automation, AI-powered workflows, moving on to agentic AI. So I see it as an evolution. At least at this moment, we don't see a radical shift in composition of our talent stack. But we'd love to hear from Ricardo.
I mentioned I think in the first question. So this is one of the reasons why we are also shifting a bit and putting more focus on attracting ML AI engineering in general. So we know that Gen AI and agentic AI has some things in common with traditional AI, but in our perspective, it also has a stronger component in terms of engineering specialists. And in this sense, we are also prioritizing the development and attracting that talent. So the composition is changing because of agentic AI, in our view. Not dramatically, I agree with Sumee, but
thanks.
But yeah, it affects.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Back to you, Colin.
So I wanted to touch, we've been talking a lot about capabilities in terms of the roles and the types of people that you need in that talent stack and how you recruit them, how you train them. I wanted to touch on organization, because I think this is a big part of the continuing literature right now, is how do you organize and what is COE-led and what is BU-led and a host of other questions, especially for banks that are starting from a trailing position or a lagging position. And Sumee, I wanted to go to you first, because my understanding about the innovation ecosystem at TD Bank is that you have a lead for innovation acceleration and you have a lead for enterprise innovation. And those are great titles, but they don't necessarily describe what each of those people does, what their background is, and most importantly, how they work together. Can you unpack that for us a little bit in this context of aligning kind of technical versus operational leaders, or the research and the business functions?
Yeah, for sure. So you rightfully point out we have a very mature innovation framework, a way to enable innovation across every aspect of the bank that has been sort of in operation over the last 3+ years. And really, it's a very grassroots effort where anyone sitting within any line of business can submit innovative ideas. There's a process by which we manage that pipeline. We identify top opportunities. The acceleration is really, how do we create a contained sandbox environment to allow us to test these ideas in a contained way quickly to assess the viability of the idea. And so we look at quick proof of concepts, pilots with the appropriate governance on these on this innovation framework to allow us to vet the idea before we push it up the chain. So it's really a way to funnel ideas, funnel that pipeline, and AI sort of adoption really benefits from this synergy with the innovation framework and the maturity, because a lot of our AI R&D and POCs originated and progressed as part of the innovation framework. We proved out these ideas before making significant investments, whether in talent or platform or what have you. That's one aspect of it. The second I want to say, within the AI organization at TD, I talked a lot about the Center of Excellence. I should mention we have very mature AI practice teams that are well embedded within the lines of businesses too, that really drive that alignment between the center and what's happening, what's the needs of the lines of businesses. So while the COE serves as, thought leaders, we sort of provide guiding principles, education, awareness. We do break new ground in terms of bringing advanced use cases to life. There is a very sort of systematic knowledge sharing with our practices to drive that alignment with the line of business, as well as adoption and scale within line of business.
Yeah. And then sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Colin. Just on this, there's a great question in the chat that speaks to this top-down versus bottom-up. Nicholas Camatons in the chat has asked, how do you balance between bottom-up versus top-down project leadership and ownership of AI projects? More specifically, he's asking, do you allow or encourage bottom-up use case finding from colleagues who formally don't have a Gen AI positions and are not part of any AI team? Or do you mostly try to push top-down use cases from leadership team ideas, or try to productionize research findings from the more academic teams that you have? And I think that's a really excellent question for you, Sumee, but also for you, Ricardo, how you organize. I don't know, Sumee,
start and hand to Ricardo. I think our innovation framework exactly allows for that bottom-up sourcing of ideas from across the organization. I think there's from a COE, we drive good prioritization alignment at a leadership level to then two things. One, we're vetting the right ideas. And then as we get into build and scale, we're prioritizing the right ideas that map well to business priorities, business ambitions, the value that's getting unlocked within the business. So I want to say it's a balance. Ideas can come from anywhere, but we have good top-down alignment on what are the top ideas we're going to go after. Over to you, Ricardo.
Yes, quite similar from our side. Ideas are coming from people with technical and without technical background. Then there are alignment processes whereby all the ideas crystallize eventually in a portfolio of projects, a portfolio of AI initiatives. And that portfolio of AI initiatives is the one that is tracked over time. But long story short, both. So we allow for both, and then obviously eventually everything crystallizes in a portfolio of AI projects that are aligned with the different business units.
Yeah, and my quick follow-up question for Ricardo was, is the innovation framework that Sumee described, is it familiar within BBVA, or does it take on additional nuance considering that you have this massive global network of specialists that span Spain and Turkey and Mexico and Colombia and Argentina and Peru and Uruguay? And so in a lot of the literature, there is an idea that AI transformation starts as AI innovation starts as a very centralized initiative, then it becomes very embedded, and then it becomes decentralized, and then eventually, like cloud or internet or anything else, you stop putting the modifier before all the groups, and AI, you become an AI first or an AI native organization. So my long-winded question is, with that global dispersion of all the specialists, what are some of the org mechanisms that might be unique to your innovation framework versus TD's or another similar bank?
Yes, here I would have liked three best practices. So the first one is distribute work models supported by effective asynchronous collaboration, which is a challenge, but we have demonstrated that this could work. Then secondly, I would highlight standardized development protocols to ensure consistency and also future scalability of the projects that are developed locally. That's quite important for effective globalization of AI projects. And then the third is about culture, collaborative culture, leveraging both in technical and diversity as key drivers for innovation.
Excellent. So we're entering the last section or the last phase of discussion, which is kind of looking ahead and looking at potential obstacles and pitfalls that could blunt a bank's effort on their current trajectory. And to set this last part of the discussion up, in addition to looking at the incoming chat questions, I want to kind of conclude with like the money slides from the report and what I think are like the most impactful key findings. So one of the things that we did with the talent data was we mashed it up with our use case data that came directly from the use case tracker we launched back in February. And this was really interesting and speaks to the point that Alexandra started us with, which is that, you know, talent needs to be an enabler of something bigger than just capability. It needs to drive outcomes. It needs to drive ROI. And when we did our first correlation between these two data sets, we were impressed to find that as you have more and more talent capability, we see more and more documented use cases. You see about twice as many documented use cases among the leaders in talent as you do from the rest of the index. But also you're 1.5 times more likely to disclose ROI from those use cases. And you're 1.4 times more likely to define the use case as spanning multiple lines of business. So bottom line is it feels to us like more talent equals better outcomes at the end of the day. But at the same time, not everybody is on the same trajectory. It's not one size fits all, which is this theme that keeps coming up again and again in our conversations. And so I also wanted to look at basically how the talent stack is beginning to change, especially as we have more and more historical data and can do more cuts on a longitudinal basis. And one of the things that we found, focusing in on two capability areas, the implementation talent and the data engineering talent, is that at present across the entire index, there is a very, low ratio of implementation specialists to data engineers, about 1 to 8 across the index as a whole. But as you begin to grow your talent stack, that ratio begins to switch to be more favorable to that implementation talent. And there are particular outliers like JPMC and Capital One and Goldman Sachs that are making a lot of news about the scalability of their use cases across like the wider business that have this ratio approaching like 1 to 3 or like 1 to 2. It feels like that once you hit certain prerequisites with your supporting data architecture and your supporting data infrastructure, certain banks are then able to go to light speed. And I don't just want to focus on these outliers that are in the news. I really also want to focus on those banks that are hugging the x-axis and not achieving liftoff and not keeping pace with the leaders in the overall index, including BBVA and TD. And so, like, looking ahead or looking over the journey that you've had so far, does that narrative resonate with you in terms of achieving a particular moment in time, since both your banks went through huge tech transformations, where you got confident that the data infrastructure and the data architecture was satisfactory enough to put these plans into production? And that is like one of the key elements, in addition to the talent of accelerating the outcomes and the use cases that we're starting to see organically across the Index 50.
I can go first. Great question, Colin. I want to say, much like what you shared, TD completed a 3-year sort of cloud data migration journey recently. And because of that, we're seeing significant acceleration in just how quickly we're able to move on our AI sort of use cases. I also want to emphasize the point Ricardo made earlier on reuse. The fact that the investments we make in the AI platform, the foundations we build, the standardization we drive in how we build these use cases really drives that repeatability and scalability, reuse across the organization. So use of standardized design patterns in how we build these use cases, how we build a platform in the environment, really helps us then scale across, pan segment as quickly as possible once we find a sort of high value opportunity.
Yeah, Adding from my side, and I was reflecting over the question, no, as we speak. We are also in the process of migrating to the cloud. So we already migrated our most important, let's say, countries in the footprint, but we are still in the process. And one of the main reasons why we are migrating to the cloud, apart from obvious cost reasons and other kind of stuff, is this, let's say, trying to put in production or to optimize the time to value of our AI solutions. We know that this is a challenge in the market. And we know that being in the cloud does not guarantee automatically that we are going to optimize our time to value. And this is a key priority and a key KPI for us. And being in the cloud is not only cost efficient, it is also an opportunity to change our ways of working. And we are leveraging on that cloud transition to transform the way we operate and the way we do analytics at a scale.
I think the other, and I'll ask Alexandra if there's any additional questions coming into chat as we kind of enter the last 10 minutes. The other question I had is that a lot of the outcomes in the ROI is contingent not only on these prerequisites that we're talking about in terms of tech or even talent, but it's about the uptake of the tools by the users that they're intended for. And I'm interested in what best practices people are seeing to monitor and adjust that uptake as so many tools are moving out of the lab into the front office, and whether that includes feedback from super users is one approach that we've seen, is extended use of these tools in sandboxes before you pull them out to additional kind of user groups, or what are the best practices to not just get to that stage of production, but to ensure that the usage is actually where you want it to be over time?
I think that you mentioned it, Colin. So we need to have experimentation platform, sandbox. And if that is like set up in the right manner, that will shorten this time to value of the life cycle between the AI system development and deployment. So the experimentation to the production environment.
Excellent. And then the last question before we go to any remaining kind of Q&A is, and I think we touched on this a little bit, but are there emerging areas of specialized skills that you're just starting to think about at this stage of your AI journey? And that can include agentic, it can include quantum, it can include the next steps on foundational models. But what's keeping you up at night in terms of like where you need to hire first, especially after having so much success in getting to this stage of your talent stack and just making sure that it continues on its like natural course?
I think that this circles back to the first question, right?
Yeah.
Gen AI / agentic specific talent. This is something that we are focusing a lot on. And another important point is responsible AI. So that's something that we need to always bear in mind, that all these technologies come with a big responsibility, and we need to train our people not to build models, put them in production and using them, but also use them in a safe and responsible manner.
And I would be neglectful if I did not take this opportunity to plug our recently published Responsible AI report that was the topic of our last roundtable. So thank you, Ricardo, for that. Sumee, same question for you on the edge of the horizon. Kind of what skills and capabilities are you focused on next to kind of continue the journey?
Apologies first for dropping. I had some network issues, but I don't have a crystal ball, Colin. I think we're being pragmatic as we think about our pipeline and the use cases we're trying to go live with, whether it's next generation predictive or generative or agentic AI in the coming 18 to 24 months. That's sort of driving where we're focusing from a talent perspective. As I mentioned, a lot of growth on the product business side, naturally always in the market for good AI talent, but also good bridge connectors, folks who can speak multiple sort of domains fluently and can drive adoption.
Can I jump in, Colin? Because there's a question from Robert in the chat. precisely on this, and it's actually for you, Sumee. It is, he's saying, you mentioned TD shift toward commercialization and the growth of bridge roles. Someone with a capital markets background now pivoting into AI product, where do you see the best entry points to contribute meaningfully at this stage of adoption? I don't know if you want to address that question, and I'd love to then pivot to an ROI question for both of you.
Yeah, I'd love to address that question. So I spoke about the practice teams that are embedded within lines of businesses. That feels like the perfect sort of entry point for someone coming with strong capital markets business knowledge, who has grown AI domain knowledge to really function more in a business role or a product role, driving AI adoption within the business. Back to you, Alexandra.
Yeah, that's great. There's maybe one more question, and I know we're running out of time, and I'd love to get to ROI, but from García, who says, is Agile still relevant in this whole AI capabilities building game in your banks? And I wonder whether you might just, Ricardo, is that still relevant for you?
Absolutely, absolutely. So for us, Agile methodology is becoming the standard practice. And together with a clear governance, that allows us to link this technical decision making with the bank strategic priorities. So for us, is still critical.
And
yeah,
so
I would say more relevant now than ever, really.
Okay, well, I will hope García is still listening to that. I know we've only got a few more minutes left, but just maybe a quick rapid fire question, which is we've spent some time on the skills, and thank you both for your comments on that. And it is something that's obviously so important for not only the training at the senior level, but also getting the tools, the licenses out, the uptake out, and of course the productivity and the ROI through from the training and skills development in the bank. But I'm just wondering if you would both comment on sort of what I'm trying to get to is the training that goes in for the uptake to get to the kind of efficiency gains that you have envisioned. Maybe sort of to point that question to the measurement of that and where you're seeing that and how you're doing that. For many, this is going in and measuring productivity gains or efficiency gains where there hasn't been measurement before, and now the tools are going into the hands of everyone, and training is then following. But how do you see that, Sumee? If you may start that at TD Bank, how are you tracking the uptake?
Yeah, it's a great question, Alexandra. We're doing a BI for AI program. We're almost building sort of detailed dashboards that allow us to track everything from, the extent to which our frontline colleagues use these Gen AI capabilities. When they are using them, what's the impact we see? So I'll take the call center example. How often is an average frontline call center colleague using the Gen AI capability? How is it impacting their call relative to average, right? Is it reducing their call handle time? Is it reducing the handoff to the second line specialist? We're sort of measuring all of that to now do two things. Fine tune our solution stack so it drives the necessary value, but also recognize where we have opportunities to drive more change management, training, awareness, coaching to make sure these tools get used the way they should be to unlock the value from these use cases.
Ricardo.
Yes, along the same lines, we also track the efficiency gains that our users are getting from the application of the Gen AI technologies. It's not that we are tracking with a specific methodology. We tend to allow users to self-declare the efficiency gains that they are observing in their specific use cases. And we know that, for instance, using ChatGPT in the wider community is leading to efficiency gains of 30% in tasks related to personal productivity. So this is something that, even if it's being subjective, we do believe that it needs to be tracked at this stage. In the future, we do believe that it will not be needed to track the efficiency gains that one could obtain from Gen AI technologies, as we now do not track the efficiency gains that we obtain from Excel, for instance. And we discussed, Alexandra, when you were around with my colleague Elena. So now is needed. We need to track the ROI of these investments, and for that purpose, we need to measure the efficiency gains. but we do believe that it's something transitory. In the future, nobody will question on the efficiency gains that can be obtained for the application of Gen AI technologies in the business.
Yeah, so important to track today. It will become business as usual.
Absolutely.
I know we've got 1 second left, Colin, but we've got a question from the great Tim Gordon, who is a close friend of Evident and tracks this and is brilliant. Hope you can hear what I'm saying, Tim. He has a question, and I think that goes back to you, Sumee, because he's asking who is leading the change management process for the wider bank. Is HR playing a role?
Yeah, I will go first. We lead the change is led from the data organization, from analytics transformation, Gen AI adoption teams. But we obviously work together with talent and culture. They are a key player for us.
Yeah.
In terms of training programs, in terms of deploying effectively and safely all these technologies in the organization. So we are one team in this implementation, huge implementation project.
Yeah.
In our case, I want to say the line of business rolling out the use case stands tall on the change management activities, of course, supported by the center, by the AI practice, by HR, by other functions, but it's a line of business that stands tall and drives the change management activities.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think, Colin,
yeah, I think we're right on time. And I just thought it was great to conclude on ROI, and just wanted to bring to the audience's attention. We just, at the same time we released the talent report, we updated our use case tracker. There's over 40 new use cases across the 50 banks that we've added to that database for our members. Our next Insights report is going to be focused on outcomes. It's going to be focused on ROI. It's going to be focused on these use cases. My colleague will be distributing a poll right now in chat. If you're interested in registering for that roundtable that's tentatively scheduled for June 10th, please just say yes, and we'll get you kind of pre-registered for the next one of these. Speakers will be announced shortly. And most importantly, just our speakers, Ricardo and Sumee, thank you so much for your time, your attention, and obviously lending your expertise. These events are designed for the benefit of the wider community, and I think we just learned so much from each other when we in forums like this. So thank you.
Thank you for hosting us.
Thank you for joining, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks to you.